When it comes to relationships, many people struggle. Many people can't even define who their friends are. Why? Because everyone has their definition of what a friend is. For some, a friend is someone that's deeply involved with you emotionally. For others, a friend is someone who looks after you, even though you don't have contact with them regularly. So people have their visions on how what a friendship is, and that's diverse amongst people. I'm not going into any of that. There is one question concerning relationships that most people never ask themselves. Most people go into their feelings, they go into their expectations or their interests. They judge people based on their expectations. They judge their relationships whether or not someone is good for them based on their own expectations, which often are not examined. And I told you often don't do that. Too many people don't know how to ask the right questions. Because if you ask the wrong questions, you get the wrong answers. You get what I'm saying? Okay, when it comes to evaluating friendships and any other type of human relationship you will have, stop looking at the past, what you share with one another, or common experiences or common interests. Stop looking at all of that. What I'm saying here may sound counterproductive, because most people tell you, look at common interests, what you have in common, what you agree with together. I'm telling you to look at something else, something that most people never even consider. And that's the following question. Will this individual or will this relationship be a snare unto me in the near future? Let me repeat that question, but this is a question that most people never ask, because most people never look beyond. The question is this individual or is this relationship going to be a snare unto me in the near future? Just think about that question. It's a very powerful question. You don't consider whether or not you agree with one another, whether you have common interest, or whether emotionally it clicks and all of that. You don't look at any of that. You look at something very practical, whether the individual is going to be safe for you in the long run. Now look, if someone is selling drugs on the street and he's in fights all the time, and sometimes also guns are involved, then you know an individual like that is not safe for you to be involved with. But that's way too obvious. But there are times people carry danger with them and they will become dangerous for you in the near future, but it's not that obvious. And that's what I want to talk about. Some people will be a snare unto you. They're not a snare unto you today, but in near future, if you remain around them and they remain around you, if in the long run, they'll become a snare unto you. Okay, you want me to give a biblical example? Look at David and Jonathan. Jonathan was the son of King Saul. He was the heir to the throne of all the children Saul had. So the heir to the throne was good friends with David. And remember, Saul was demon possessed and he was after David's life. Soon, Saul was also after Jonathan's life. And there was a time during a battle that Saul declared that Jonathan had to die. But there were the officials in the army that stopped the whole thing. So Jonathan's life as the heir of the throne, as the number one in line of succession, as the son of King Saul, his life was threatened by King Saul himself. But what happened afterwards? Jonathan remained close with his biological father. Yes, with that genocidal maniac, demon-possessed, reprobate Saul, he remained close with him. And now ask yourself, how can it be that you have someone that's demon-possessed, who has become a reprobate, who's after the life of an anointed one of the Lord, because David was anointed by the Lord, and you are close friends with the anointed one of the Lord, But at the same time, you also want to remain close with someone that's after the life of the one that's anointed. How is that possible? Jonathan did not want to let go. Jonathan should have taken actions against his father so that both he as well as the Israelite nation would have been spared a lot of harm, because Saul brought a lot of harm on the Israelites. It wasn't just David that he made life difficult for. He made things hard on his own people. And Jonathan could have prevented all of that if he took appropriate actions against his father, but he didn't do it. As the heir to the throne, he could have easily done it. And he also could have spared David a lot of trouble. Jonathan did not want to let go. Jonathan wanted things to go back to normal. Jonathan wanted things to, well, be relieved again. Now, Jonathan had no ill will towards David, absolutely not. He even helped David out on multiple occasions. But look at the bigger picture. Jonathan remained yoked with a reprobate. A reprobate that was raging against the anointed one of the Lord. So Jonathan enabled his reprobate father, because he didn't take appropriate actions against his father, when it was obviously that those actions had to be taken. So this Jonathan became a snare unto David. They were such close friends, even almost brothers. Jonathan was not good for David. And look at this. When Saul died, Jonathan was with him, and Jonathan died also. So because Jonathan remained around the reprobate, the plagues of the reprobate began to affect him, and he died together with the reprobate. And if Jonathan would have remained close to David, David would have perished also with them. Because Satan would have used Jonathan to draw David into destruction. So Jonathan was not good for David, absolutely not. Well, David had rejection issues that he was struggling with. That's why David couldn't see it. But us who read the Old Testament, who see how it all unfolded, can see clearly Jonathan was not good for David. Jonathan became a snare unto David. And in the same way, there are people that will become a snare unto you. Often we don't see that because we're so focused on the good times and the good moments we have with them. And there's nothing wrong with having good times with people or having good moments with them. Just look at the bigger picture. And that's what most people don't do. They don't look at the bigger picture. It's only when things get toxic or when some tribulation arrives that people begin to ask what's going on. And then it's often way too late. Look, during your walk by faith, there will be people that the Holy Spirit will block from you. Not because those people intend to harm you, not because those people ever would intend to harm you to begin with, they will not. But the Holy Spirit blocks them from you because those people will enable harm unto you. I'm not saying they will do that on purpose. No, they won't do it on purpose, but it doesn't matter whether they do it on purpose or not. They will enable harm unto you in the future. That's why the Holy Spirit blocks them from you. It can be that you're outside, you're walking, and you see someone, but that individual can't see you. The Holy Spirit has made you invisible to them. Because the Holy Spirit doesn't want them around you, because the Holy Spirit knows they will enable danger unto you. Okay, you want me to give a parable? Okay, let me give a parable. You have Jimmy, and you have Albert. Two buddies. They're both from the streets. Okay? But both finished college and both have their own business. So they're entrepreneurs. And they make, well, they're not that rich. They're not even rich to begin with, but they make some good money. Then Albert has a cousin. And this cousin helps him out in Albert's shop. And this cousin sees Jimmy. And he sees that Jimmy has this girlfriend with him. And this cousin of Albert noticed immediately that this woman had a grip on Jimmy. And he also saw that this woman looked lustfully after Albert. So this cousin immediately saw, oh dear, this is going to turn out ugly. So that cousin told Albert, that Jamie that you're hanging out with. Albert said, yeah, he's a great buddy, man. We are like bros. And the cousin told them, Albert, get rid of that guy. I'm not telling you to be angry with him, just lower your contact and make sure you lose him. That guy is going to bring trouble onto you. I'm telling you. Albert didn't think it was a big deal. Well, about a half year later, Albert went missing. And when Jimmy found out, Jimmy was terrified. Jimmy had an alibi, so he had nothing to do with it. Now, what happened? That girlfriend of Jimmy made a move on Albert. And Albert, being married, made blame, no, this is not going to happen. This woman didn't want to leave him alone. So both Jimmy and his wife filed a police report against this woman. They didn't tell Jimmy about it because they didn't want the friendship to suffer. But this woman was so upset due to the rejection of Albert that she began to murmur and complain with an ex-boyfriend about how she was treated by this Albert. And that ex-boyfriend, together with some guys from the streets, came after Albert. They kidnapped him. Now, the cousin of Albert, a half year earlier, that noticed the Jezebel type attitude of this girlfriend of Jimmy, already sensed that bad stuff were about to happen. He didn't know exactly what would happen, but he sensed in his spirit this is going wrong. What happened here? That Jimmy became a snare onto Albert. That Jimmy never intended harm to Albert. They were like bros. Okay, but Jimmy himself was not safe for Albert. You get what I'm saying here? So if that Albert would have listened to his cousin and he would have lowered the contact, because Jimmy was occupied anyway with his own business, what would have happened was that that girlfriend of Jimmy would have forgotten about Albert and all those bad stuff wouldn't have happened. Now in this case it's obvious that this Jimmy wasn't good for Albert. Now, you can't see the future on your own terms, okay? And I'm not telling you to go to fortune tellers, absolutely not, don't do that. Just remain in prayer. Remain active. It's very hard for Satan to trap and kill someone that's active. And here's the thing, that Albert in this parable, he was busy, but he wasn't active. He was occupied with his business, but he wasn't active. If he was active, he would have been alert. And if he would have been alert, he would have noticed that this Jimmy has a woman with him that's quite dangerous. He didn't even notice that. That's why it's important to be alert and active. Look, there are people that will be a snare onto you in the future. Sometimes you can see it in here and now. Sometimes it's not that obvious. However, you can notice red flags. And I'm telling you, pay attention to them. Don't risk having a Judas amongst you. Now in this case, Jimmy was not a Judas because he didn't betray Albert. But Jimmy was an open door for Judases to enter Albert's life. There are people that will be a snare onto you because it will enable danger onto you, onto your family, onto your business, onto your enterprise, onto your productions, onto your heritage. That's why I'm telling you, some relationships are not good for you. And when those relationships end, or when they are terminated, you often feel sad. You often think, Lord, why? You often think, okay, why do other people have it so easy when it comes to relationships? And I often have to go through one the friendship ends, then another begins and it ends. And you think, Lord, why am I going through all of this? What's happening is you're active. And because you're active, it's very hard for the demons to trap you. But you don't notice the advantage you have. You feel the temporal unease of not having persistent close relationships. But I'm telling you, you're far better off that way than to be stuck in warm, close friendships in which you're not safe. I'm going to repeat it one more time because this needs to get through to you. Some folks will be a snare onto you. And most people, when it comes to relationships, they don't ask that question. Is this individual or is this relationship going to be a snare onto me in the near future? About me, I didn't used to ask that question. When I was 15, 16, 17 till 20 or even 21, I did ask questions about people, but I didn't ask that particular question. When I turned 22, going towards 23, I began to ask that question. Because I noticed that a lot of folks were in denial and they were putting up with stuff they shouldn't put up with. And when I confronted them, they either denied it or pretended I was seeing ghosts. Then I realized, well, this individual is not going to be good for me because this individual doesn't want to be real. How can I, who's blessed, be close to someone that refuses to be in reality? That's not going to work out well. I'm telling you, you don't have to be 80 years old or 100 years old to have this understanding. I had it around age 20, 21. I'm not saying I didn't realize it earlier, but it was then it really got through to me. You need to ask the question, is this individual going to be a snare onto me in the near future? Or is this relationship going to be a snare onto me in the near future? There are pagans out there who ask this question with every relationship. That's why those pagans often avoid a lot of harm and a lot of trauma. There are unbelievers who are not pagan, but because they've been through so much, they've learned to be alert. They've learned to anticipate. That's why I told you before also, stop expecting everything to start off good in your life. You want marriage, you want kids, you want a house, you want to travel around, you want to live in life in abundance. That's good. Don't expect it all to come on your terms. Don't expect it all to start off good, to start off smoothly. Don't expect your blessings or the good things in your life to come in a smooth, easy way to you. It's that expectation that people have, which is an unexamined expectation, that enables Satan to trap them. And when everything starts off good, people to look beyond because they're so overwhelmed and so addicted to the euphoria that they experience because things have started off good. For example, you join a local church. There's so much euphoria. Praise the Lord. And you meet new brothers and sisters in Christ. And man, you have deep fellowship. Sometimes, man, it goes so great. But then, when the honeymoon phase is over, you notice that the pastor keeps preaching the same message every Sunday. You notice that there's even sickness amongst the believers over there. At least the people claim to be believers. Many are just churchgoers, not believers. But you notice there's sickness amongst them, and they don't get any better. Now you realize that you are stuck in a cult. But you could have seen that before, but because things started off so good, you were blinded. And because you were blinded, you didn't ask the question, are these people going to be a snare onto me in the near future? If you would have asked that question, you would have looked around, you would have noticed things. Look, I'm going to give another parable. You have, let me think of a male name, Roberto. Roberto meets Alia, this Ukrainian girl. And this Ukrainian girl She looks fine, has a nice figure, she's a bit tall, and she has a very soft voice, so this Roberto is totally crazy about her. And he talks about it with his friends, and his friends, man, they cheer him. Roberto was in a very toxic relationship a few years back, and he had to recover, so now he encountered someone that in which there was his magical click, and he was so happy. Okay. A year later, after the wedding, all hell breaks loose. And eventually, this chick began to beat the crap out of him. And she even called the police on him and pretended as if he was physically abusing her. She would wound herself and pretend as if he did it. And then Roberto was thinking, oh dear, how did I end up in this mess? Now listen to me, Roberto. She did not turn on you. She was always that way. You just didn't look at the bigger picture. When everything started off good, you met each other and had this magical click, this electric shock that you sensed, and you both gave into it. That was a demonic thing, by the way, that should have been a big no to you, but you weren't aware of it. So when everything started off good, you were so intoxicated, and you even got married quickly and all of that. You didn't look beyond, you didn't never ask the right questions. And now you're waking up and you realize the nightmare you entered into. And this nightmare is far worse than the previous relationship that you escaped from. So Satan led you from bad to worse, but there was this space of relief in between. And you fell for that space of relief. So again, ask yourself this question always. Is this individual or is this relationship going to be a snare onto me in the near future? Well, that's it for now. Remember, Christ walked in wisdom. Christ walked in power. Christ walked in strength. Christ was not stupid. Christ was loving, he was kind, he was merciful, but he wasn't dumb. Okay? Christ didn't roll with everyone. And there's a good reason, a very good reason why he didn't roll with everyone, because he knew some folks will endanger you in the long run. Well, Judas, he tolerated so that scripture and prophecy could be fulfilled. Well, no prophecy has to be fulfilled with you. Okay? So make wise decisions in line with Christ and make sure you lose those that will be a snare onto you. Don't lose them by just turning on them or by causing a fight and all of that. Lose them in a smart manner. Lose them in a peaceful way so that you both can go on your way. Lest the enemy use that conflict to haunt you later on. Well, that's it for now. Agree with Christ and be at peace.